special pledge allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, we'll open the meeting with public comment. Any public comment on subjects not on the agenda? Tim?
Mr. Chairman, Tim Ravendall, Redoubt News. I may be out of line here, it might be a part of your agenda, I hope not. But my question is last spring and through the summer, there was discussions at the commission meeting regarding the possible or the potential startup of a process for the concessionaire at the silos. And if that's part of the agenda, then I step away from here. Otherwise, we have not heard anything on that, so people are asking what is the status of that.
So I guess what I can say is that it will be part of the agenda, but not a discussing, too much of a discussing topic, because it's not posted on the agenda, you see what I'm saying? It's probably gonna come up today in our conversation, but we will post it.
But it is forthcoming.
When we're ready to start making those decisions,
Thank you, sir.
yes.
Any other public comment? Okay, so we do- I guess we'll go on to the approval of minutes for October 21st, 2019.
October 21st, I move that we approve the minutes for October 21st.
I'll second the motion. Motion is made, second to approve minutes from October 22nd, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Now, we have claims. Claims in the amount of $148,903.81.
Give me that amount again, Mike.
$148,903.81.
I reviewed those claims this morning and make a motion that we pay the claims in the amount of $148,903.81.
I'll second the motion. Motion's been made and seconded to pay claims the said amount. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Payroll claims in the amount of $206,157.02.
I'll move that we pay payroll claims in the amount of $206,157.02.
I'll second the motion. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Contract from the Department of Public Health for the Homemaker Respite Program for the Rocky Mountain Area 4 Agency on Aging and the Broadwater County Health Department provision for home care services of the elderly. Contract in the amount of $19,213.00. Just a contract with Rocky to continue the home care services for public health.
That's a great program for our seniors, and I move that we sign the contract.
I will second the motion. Motion's been made and seconded to Approve the contract between Rocky Mountain Development Council and Broadwater County Health Department. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. You'll hear from the Montana Association of Counties, the policy year 2019-2020 inmate excess medical insurance program renewal. No rate increase for the 5th year. This covers November 1st, 2019 through October 31st, 2020. I believe we probably have to have the Sheriff's Department go through this. That's our medical insurance for inmates. Postcard here from Brownsfield. Conference in Los Angeles, December 11th to the 13th. Aircraft Maintenance Technology Magazine. Stormwater Solutions. Wastewater Division magazines. Let's go to the Commissioner's update. Let's see, I attended the THS board meeting last week. The Billings Clinic and the THS board, I believe, will have announcements Wednesday, I believe, is that at 10:30, Hugh?
That's right.
Is that here or is that at the hospital?
I think it's the DHC conference room.
Okay. And that, I believe at that time, Billings Clinic will pay off the loan to the
We
county?
hope. I'll see the check, I'm sure it's there.
Okay.
$4,500.90 or something.
Okay. That's the balance on the account?
Yeah,
Okay.
balance on the warrants.
And the other thing is, the Broadwater High School girls were cross-country state champions for Class B. That's coached by our victim's witness advocate, Brooke Dolan. So congratulations to those young ladies. I'm sure that wasn't a very fun experience running in the snow and wind in Great Falls, but
Yeah.
they got the job done. So congratulations to the young ladies. And that's all I have.
All right, let's see, we did receive our PILT payment that was litigation under payment from 2015. Anyway, that amount was $15,823. I attended the Conservation District last Tuesday. We didn't get home till 11:45, a long meeting that night, but those guys do good work. Attended the LAPC meeting, also attended the solid waste meeting. Things that were discussed there were, let's see, to date in revenue from disposal fees, they have collected over $23,000, which is revenue that we were not capturing in the past, so that's good for our solid waste program. It's costing $30 a ton to take cardboard to Pacific, which is costing the county to take it there, $30 a ton. So the decision may be made to maybe just go ahead and landfill it because it's a lot less to do that, rather than the county paying extra money. So there's also, they're charging a disposal fee for mattresses, which is $5. Compared to Lewis and Clark County, it's $10, and compared to Gallatin, it's $20. So I guess we're still doing okay there. The main thing is that they're going to have some winter hours just at the Cedar Street site. I'm not sure what those are going to be yet. They'll advertise that in the paper, but the main reason for that, there's no lighting over the canisters, and it's a safety issue, and we're worried about somebody getting hurt up there after it gets dark. So I imagine they'll probably adjust those hours to the daylight savings time hours. And that's the main thing there. And then also attended the MSU Architecture Students midterm review in Bozeman. And you can see on the wall, the students that were assigned to that. That was their vision of what our fire station law enforcement would probably look like. They have bigger dreams than we do, but it's good to talk to them, and we had opportunity to talk with them and understand. They got an opportunity to understand really what our needs are and the size of our community and some things like that. So they'll be going after it again, and we'll see what they come up with. But it was a good discussion. Mike Conkey, our DES, went down as well, and it was a good day. Spend the time with those students.
I guess we can go to our 10-15 Trust Board request to hire Peter Simons for Galzagori Pedestrian Trail work.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
How are you folks today?
We're doing great, thank you, Virgil.
I'm getting closer to getting my hearing fixed, so one of these days I won't have to stand up at the table. Okay, we've talked to Peter, and he's decided to take the job on, and we will continue to work with that, and we should have something in writing specific from him. And I'll see him this afternoon and remind him of that, okay?
All right, very good. Are you planning to have another meeting then for your board to approve that contract?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you'll be well informed before we go.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'm glad we found the old silos plan. We were so sure there was one. Probably, it's 20 years old, but it was pretty well done. So it should work to enhance the next phase of the development.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Virgil.
And just so you all know, the next trust board meeting will be November 13th, which is a Wednesday. Normally have our meetings on Tuesday, but you guys need that room in here for your meeting. So the next trust board meeting will be Wednesday, November 13th at noon.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Helene Galzagori, and so I'm curious as to what the attorney's being hired for regarding the Galzagori bike path. That you guys named Galzagori bike path. Peter Simon.
I didn't hear.
This is Ms. Galzagori. She just wants to know why the trust board's hiring Peter Simon. What's his work going to encompass? What's he going to do?
It will be a legal review of rights-of-ways and this sort of thing from the past. Okay.
From the past, does that include Bedford Lower Bridge Road?
I would imagine he'll sort it out so that.
I guess the only thing I request is we are being represented by Donnie Crowley and Helena, and I'd like to have them be informed. It's Jack Thiessen is our attorney, but sometimes, or Mark Thiessen, but sometimes it's Jack Connors.
As soon as we have the formal paperwork and what Peter is going to do, we'll see to it you get a copy of that.
Okay, and the attorneys get a copy of it. Now, Corey Swanson knows that we were represented, but I don't know that Peter.
Can you make sure that Debbie knows the address and sort of to your representative?
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
What's the last name? I'm sorry.
For
The
the
attorney,
attorneys,
yeah.
Mark Thiessen
Peace.
and Jack Connors
Thank you.
of Donnie Crowley.
I'll make sure that Peter knows that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Your next agenda item is Nicole Brown Planning, Mary Hendrickson Public Works presenting the Rolling Glens Ranch Road speed limit petition. Nicole was not in today, and Mary did not feel public or comfortable presenting that.
There's actually someone here to,
Oh, okay.
from the public to talk about that, so I just found that out.
Hi, I'm Deanna Colada. Mr. Chairman, thank you for hearing me. I actually did the petition for Rolling Glen Ranch Road. The 2-mile stretch between Wheatland Road and the Rolling Glen Ranch subdivision, to have it, to hopefully have a speed limit posted of 35 miles an hour. Apparently, there's not a speed limit on that road with talking to the sheriff, and it's safe and prudent. We have some concerns, Rolling Glen Ranch residents have some concerns with the speed of passenger vehicles on that road, construction vehicles, delivery vehicles, even UPS and other delivery vehicles utilizing that road. There's been a couple rollover accidents on there, single vehicle rollover accidents since I lived there. And the Highway Patrol responded to one. He was under the impression that that was a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. So there seems to be some confusion about what is the speed limit on that road. And so there was that, the road deterioration. I don't know if you guys have driven it lately, but we have pretty significant spring runoff where between the road and then the farmer's field, it's getting really steep. So last year when we had all the snow, you couldn't tell where the roadsides are. So this, I'm gonna add this, I don't know if that's okay or not, but could we discuss some kind of markers now? Cause it's way worse than it was last year, and we're just worried about snow and not being able to see the roadsides. Maybe markers in those increased problem areas. And the other concern is when you're leaving Rolling Glen Ranch and you're going south to Wheatland, the school bus stops at Mountain Vista. And so residents are coming up over that hill, they're cresting that hill, and then when you start coming down, there's a school bus stopped right there. And if you're traveling at, increased speeds, it's probably I know that it's there, so I try to go slow when I'm taking my kids to school. But if people are forgetting with the increased amount of new people there, I feel like it's kind of dangerous. So that's why I kept it at 35 for the petition. Price Road is 35, and Wheatland Road that's paved is 45, but that is a paved straight flat road, and then by Tim's Diesel it goes down to 35.
Are there any signs for that school bus stop on that road at all?
There are no signs on Rolling Glen Ranch Road whatsoever. And then, of course, once you get to the subdivision, then there is a speed limit sign there that goes into 25 mile an hour for that subdivision.
Are there any, there's other school bus stops on Rolling Glen Ranch Road?
On that 2-mile stretch, I believe there is a school bus stop at Mountain Vista, and I believe there's a stop right at the stop sign at the corner of Wheatland and Rolling Glen Ranch Road for that west side trails subdivision.
Thank you. Our next item is 10:30, Jerry Busey, Broadwater County Census. She is not here, so I guess we will take a 7-minute recess here until 10:30.
Thanks, Deanna.
Back to our meeting for the 10:30, Jerry Busey, Broadwater County 2020 Census.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jerry Busey. I know many of you pretty well. I'm a Broadwater County graduate and born and raised here. Right now, I took a sabbatical from my career to do a 2-year stint with the U.S. Census Bureau to prepare all of Montana for the 2020 census count. A couple of things that are really significant about the 2020 census and a little different than where we have been. First of all, that the census, the decennial census as it's called, is where they do the population count of everybody residing in the whole country. So in Montana, that's also how they distribute back federal funds that you pay in as taxes, come back to Montana to a variety of programs. That is how they determine how much of the federal funding we get, is by that population count. So an estimate of the George Washington University study shows that in Montana, for every person that is counted in the census, it is the equivalent of about $2,000 per person per year. So every single man, woman, and child in the state of Montana is worth about $20,000 over that 10-year period. And that's transportation, all kinds of medical programs. That statistic uses about 30 of the highest dollar amount of federal funding for programs. So the money is probably the most important aspect of why it's important to count everyone. The second aspect of the census is that that's how we do apportionment. All the way from your voting precinct, school districts, all the way up to our congressional districts is determined by that population count. And it's a very complex figure because in the U.S. House of Representatives, there is a certain number that there can be. So it's like how every other state does in terms of growth and population. But we are really one of those states that's on the cusp of looking at getting a second congressional seat back, which would make us the first state in the union to ever gain one back after it's been lost. So that's kind of an interesting piece of history there. And so there's funding, voting, power, that whole thing. And then it's also about just the data that the census gathers is so important for economic development, infrastructure. That's also where you get the data that determines the size of your community, that qualifies you for different kinds of federal grants and programs for infrastructure development. So with those three things in mind, the 2020 census is going to be a really big deal for Montana. So I have been working for about 18 months now, going county to county, community to community, and also working really closely with a statewide committee that's been set up, and helping communities plan for the 2020 census. Largely that's about kind of coming together with sort of representation from all the facets of your community and identifying who in the community is going to be less likely to respond to the census, and really come up with some plans and information to make sure that they participate. So largely from all of the research that we've done, the hardest to count populations are, and there are several of them that I know are in this community. Number one, I think, is children under 5. In today's day, just a different kind of social environment, there tends to be, like, kids are maybe part-time with mom, part-time with dad, both think they counted them, nobody counts them. Or they're staying with grandparents temporarily, so they just end up, there's no statistical way to really match up kids under 5 because they're not in school, so there's not those administrative records that show where they are. So that's a huge, there's huge capacity for an undercount with children under 5. We also see a lot of seniors that aren't living like in a nursing home type facility. That can be another area that seniors can be missed. Rural, really rural environments can easily be missed because I know you guys have a really great planning department that's worked hard with the state, so I think the address list is really good there. But often if there's rural addresses that don't get mail delivered right to the house, that can be an easy miss. Any folks that don't speak English as a first language, that can be a big barrier to participating in the census. And as we all know, across Montana, just some anti-federal government sort of feelings really impede the taking of the census. So those are kind of the top categories, I think, as it relates to Broadwater County. So I am here today to just answer questions, kind of lay out the timeline for how things are progressing with the census, and see if you might be interested in pulling together like a loose community delegation to identify some of those hard to reach populations and what things or tools or resources we might be able to provide to help get the word out.
So, Jerry, I remember from our NACO meetings that you're going to be available to maybe do this online. Is that correct?
Yes, for the first time ever, you will have the ability to fill out the census via smartphone, internet. We also are having like a calling center program, so you can actually use just a regular voice phone and take it that way. And then, of course, it will still be available by the regular form as it has always been. There's a couple of different ways that you will be able to participate in the census, and it will first, if you have your mail delivered directly to your home, you will get a postcard, and it's available to start taking like March 9th of 2020. So you'll get a postcard that says it's now available, here's the URL, here's the call number, and they're really encouraging folks to do it digitally or by phone first. So you'll get that. If you live in a rural address or have a post office box, you don't get mail delivered to your house, you will first get your census packet as a packet. It will have the form, it will have the postcard, it will have everything in it, and it will be like physically connected to your door. So keep in mind the census is really about the housing units and who lives in them, not the person themselves. So that's why they're not delivered to a post office box. It's about identifying who lives in every housing unit. So if you don't get mail directly to your house, you will get a packet delivered to your door, and it will include the written form to fill out immediately. If you get it through the mail, they will try to encourage you to use the internet or the phone version and send a couple of postcards, and eventually, if you don't do it that way, you will get a form. So we are inviting people to really quickly respond. If you do it any of those ways right away, then you are self-responding, and that will show up on a moment-to-moment type mapping facility that we will be able to tell in every census tract how that's going. Then we can always shift gears and make a plan for where it's not going well. So then probably starting in May, there will be what we call non-response follow-up, or NARFU. It's a good census US bureaucratic terminology, but that's when we will hire the vast amount of folks to go out and start doing the door knocking to follow up. So when somebody actually comes to the door and interviews you for the census, then you're not self-responding. And that just that act of having somebody come to your door can sometimes make a difference in the responses themselves. Although the census is very much confidential, your information is not shared with any other government entity by law and by constitution. People do sometimes don't really understand that. So, for example, if you are a renter and there's 2 people on your lease, but there's really 4 people living there, if somebody is doing that interview with you, they're likely to say there's only 2 people because there's only supposed to be 2 people. So we really encourage people to be able to self-respond, and that means you're anonymously filling it out on your own. There's 9 questions, so it can't possibly take more than 10 minutes tops. So 10 minutes for 10 years. So that's the idea, is to really get people to fill it out themselves, or even with assistance from like a volunteer helping somebody get on the internet or whatever, doing different kinds of events to really help people respond themselves, so they're less likely to have that follow-up of an enumerator from the census.
Do they collect names of people living in the household like they did on some of the older census?
The census is relatively the same as it has been, but yes, initially they do collect a name and phone number of the person filling out the form. So it's, the real questions of the census are age, gender, race, nationality, how many people live in the household, and what the relationship of those people in the household is to the person filling out the form. So that's all there is, but they do have the name and phone number attached in the very beginning, just in case, because I told you it's digital. So when they match up that address, like if somebody didn't really understand how to fill it out, and maybe there's 2 families living there, and both people filled it out, that will show up in our data set, and then they will say, is that some of those people the same or different, and try to, you know, call back and just confer about the discrepancy at a particular address. But once that has all been verified, then basically all of the personally identifiable information is stripped, and your data is just that. It's just a big set of data that's used, and those 2 don't come back together for 72 years. So the idea of the census is to be just a set of data sets so that we understand what's happening in our communities for statistical purposes only. Sure. So then after 72 years, those records are merged back together, and that's where you get like Ancestry.com and those kind of things.
That was my question. I know I do some genealogy work, and it's been very helpful to go back to a lot of those old records and see who's...
Yeah, that's something I had no idea about the census, but yeah, so that's when they kind of merge back together in a way that's usable by everyone. So the census will begin counting in March, early March of 2000, and there will be the ability, of course, to self-respond in all of those ways. roughly into July. But starting in May is when door knockers will come and start following up.
How are you dealing like with college students? Are they being counted on campus? Are they being counted at home? I mean, you want them counted, but not double counted.
Exactly. So college students, there is a sort of a different set of circumstances called group quarters. And it's not just college students, but that does consider dormitories, frat houses, nursing homes, all kinds of facilities where people actually reside there. College students in particular should be counted where they go to school. Because again, the idea of the census is to see where the infrastructure needs are. So because they live in the community where they go to school, at least 9 months out of the year, that's where they should be counted on the census. So that process for group quarters, particularly in university towns, starts earlier. And all universities have the option of basically, they can, in dormitories, for example, they can opt to do that administratively. But university students in dorms do have an actual mailing address that goes just to them. So it's been typical in my experience that universities prefer to have students take the census themselves because it is sort of a rite of passage civic duty type responsibility. So they will do that, but all of those other kinds of facilities, that administration of the facility has the option to have a census taker come and do it with everyone, or they can do it for them, essentially, if they have the records to be able to do that. And then they will do that follow-up process. If there's a university town, they do that non-response follow-up. They bump it up about a month because typically college students will be moving out of their housing by May because they're done the first week. And that's when it would be starting normally. So like in Bozeman, that whole schedule would be ramped up because they want to make sure the off-campus housing folks get addressed before they leave the community for the summer.
Just out of curiosity, are military that are overseas?
The military bases are also that same type of program. They're done by a whole different sort of census group that goes into that, and then they're counted in according to, there's certain very specific parameters about how the military is done, but they're either, if they're away in foreign lands, then they're often counted in their home community, but if they're residing on a base, then they're counted within the base. But that's done administratively separate from our community census.
So how do you deal with people that have more than one residence? Where, like you said, if you don't get a response, you're gonna get a package on your door that people are only there for
For
a few
the summer
months,
months.
few weeks, whatever.
So the rule is that you are counted where you spend the most of your time. So if, for example, you're a snowbird and you go south for 3 months, you should be counted here where you spend 9 months. But if there isn't a really structured, like you maybe have 3 different homes, or you travel in a motorhome or whatever most of the year, then the guideline is that basically the census is a snapshot of what's happening on April 1st every 10 years. So if you don't have somewhere that you live most of the time, then you should take the census where you are located physically on April 1st.
So how do you check those? How do you know that a person doesn't do it 2 or 3 times depending on where they're at? Maybe they're different states, so they're trying to help each state.
Well, to be very direct about it, we are much more worried about an under-response than an over-response. That just doesn't really happen. So I think statistically, Montana in the 2010 census had like a .05 overcount. So, and that is most likely to do with college students, quite honestly. But the only way to check that again is by, there's an address. So, you know, then they can cross-reference that to lots of different kinds of administrative records and see those things. But I'm sure it does happen occasionally, but it's not typical.
Okay.
So it's maybe a little bit of a touchy subject, but how do, make sure I phrase this right. How do you distinguish the legal residents in the United States so that the results don't get skewed?
The decennial census doesn't ask the question about citizenship. And that was a whole court process and all of that this time. But, and you addressed this a little earlier, talking about like what used to be on the forms. So until 20 years ago, there was basically, most people would get that 9-question form, and then 1 out of 10 or some statistic would get what they called a long form, which was like 60 questions, how many bathrooms, what's your income, that kind of thing. So now that is no longer part of the decennial census. That is done in an ongoing census survey called the American Community Survey, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And that is basically now a survey that happens to a percentage of population month in, month out. And that does have the citizenship question on it. So that is being tracked and monitored and followed all the time. But so it's a lot more ongoing than what's every 10 years. So that's something that they track in that American Community Survey, because it's much more relevant, because it's ongoing all the time, not just every 10 years. So that is how it's done, and that's kind of how it's always been done. So it's not that the question is not being asked, it's just not being asked on the decennial census, but it is in several other Census Bureau surveys that happen all the time.
You talked about setting up a community committee, but how would you do that?
So that's a strategy that's being used this time, really just connecting, and I can give you examples from all around the state of kind of how it's working, but we would really like to see your government sector being represented, your healthcare and like community nonprofits, seniors, some representation of those groups. Your education, K through 12 education, it can be a really critical part of really getting the word out there and giving them some tools to talk about it at school so that the kids can go home and make sure that their parents fill it out. And typically it has some representation from like your economic development community. They use a lot of those statistics, and it can have a lot of good connections. So basically it can be as formal or informal as you would like, and it's about kind of brainstorming, and I have lots of resources and can share what other communities are doing and taking advantage of other events that you would be hosting anyway. For example, the Christmas stroll or some of those kind of things, just setting up an informational booth, and or your newsletters, your websites, just really using information that we already have on hand and making sure that all of your community leaders, especially at this point, know that it's coming and why it's important. And then as we move closer towards March, we have to find ways to motivate people. If they're not inclined to just pick it up and do it, what can we do? I mean, can we have events or set up a Wi-Fi hotspot at your senior center and have people come and help fill it out? So really those kind of low or no cost activities to really get the word out, moving into actually motivating people to do it. We have about 60 complete count committees formed up in communities of all sizes across the state. And, you know, everybody has their sort of events that are really well-known, and it can be a really easy thing to put something into an event that's already existing. Really utilize your networks. I mean, if we make it really easy for you, put stuff out there on your website, push out emails that are, say, Census is hiring, because when those folks do come to the doors, we want it to be your friends and neighbors. We want it really goes so much better if the people talking about the census to you are your friends and neighbors. They're the trusted voices in your community that can talk about why this is important to them. I mean, most of your senior centers, they understand that like a big bulk of the money that they get for senior programs comes from federal funding in some way. So it is just critical that people kind of have that understanding and talk to their friends and neighbors about why it's important to fill out the form. So that's much better to have your neighbor tell you to do it or ask you to do it or help you do it than for somebody that's coming from, I'm here from the government. Please listen, I'm here to help you. So that's what really the name of the Complete Count Committee is really all about, is trying to facilitate you talking to each other in your own networks and areas of expertise to talk about why this is important and help make plans to motivate people to do it.
So will you have like employees in the county to do that, or do you have employees around the state doing that, or?
We have employees around the state, myself, and there's others that do the same job as I do, and then this is my colleague Cassidy over here, she's with the state, and they have a staff of about 8, and we don't actually run those committees for you, but we help facilitate the setup and give you, you know, resources like we can print things for you, we can give you everything you need to link up to our website, send you weekly updates, and we can send it to the whole committee. In some cases, there is somebody from the city or county that kind of runs the committee, and I give them the information, they distribute it. In some cases, I do the weekly updates to everyone, sit in on phone calls when you do have a meeting, and help find volunteers to maybe do an event. So kind of connect you to other resources and groups that can do events and printing copies of things or brochures or giveaways, that kind of thing. We really facilitate helping you do that and coming to meetings and sharing best practices from other communities that are, you know, similar in makeup to this one. So yeah, we have a lot of resources to help facilitate doing that. Largely, we want it to be, you know, I can tell you what kinds of organizations are participating, like in Park County or whatever, that might be good ideas of who should be involved. And again, it's not like a weekly thing, it's just identifying, wow, we could put a message on, one thing that a lot of folks in rural counties have snowbirds. So one thing some folks are doing are putting it on tax bills, like the sense, you know, so just looking at different resources that you already have and seeing how to incorporate that message.
When does it need to be completed by, again? The completion date?
Of the Complete Count Committee?
Yeah, or no, of the census.
Oh, it will wind up in July.
July.
Start in March and wind up in July. And then those numbers are mandated to be delivered to the president by the end of the calendar year. And then they use those, of course, the next 6 months for redistricting after that. So they do come back after the fact of the census and do basically a quality control. So right now we know that we were overcounted by a minuscule percentage in 2010, but you don't find that out until the 2 years following the census, when they basically recreate it statistically and find out how you did. But the numbers stay the same from when regardless of if you missed people or overcounted people, you live with that first count you get, even if they find out. So in 2000, Montana was undercounted by over 14,000 people. So they went back and found that out after the fact, but that didn't change the outcome. So Montana ended up losing out to another state of upwards of $400 million over that 10-year period. So even if they find out there is an undercount or overcount, that doesn't change the numbers that you got in the first place.
I don't know if you know the answer to this question. So typically, after they compile the data, when does it start to take effect as far as for what we would find out if we do pick up another congressional seat, or how does Congress determine, you know, its aid based on that information?
Well, as in terms of the funding portion, that happens pretty much immediately.
Pretty quickly?
Yeah,
Okay.
but in terms of the congressional seats and stuff, that's another 6-month process after the numbers are delivered to do all of that apportionment. And I just learned, for example, in the last census, Utah lost a congressional seat. They were, by all practical purposes, people thought they were going to get one, and they ended up missing it by less than 1,000 people. So they missed 1,000 people taking the census and lost that seat by even less than that. So that's why we don't necessarily make predictions from the Census Bureau side of that, but it's really critical, and it can be that close. And now that technology is so much better, we can even see that on a digital map as we go along. So that's going to be a big deal, and it can go lots faster now because of all of the digital capacity.
So how is that congressional seat allotted? Is that strictly by the you have to have a minimal number of people to pick up a seat, or are you in competition with other areas?
You're in competition with every other district, so it depends on the growth rate per the growth rate and the population size all at the same time. So, you know, you want every congressional seat to be very close to the exact same number of people represented. So we're in competition with every other state based on how fast we're growing compared to how fast everybody else is growing. And there's a pretty interesting video that's sort of like a Schoolhouse Rock type video that shows how they weigh all of that together. It's kind of interesting, but a pretty complicated formula. But yes, we are absolutely in competition with every other state. Does anybody else have questions?
I guess I would just like to encourage our residents to participate in the upcoming census. I think it's important. And
Is there anything you would like me to do to follow up with you or any other partners throughout Townsend that might be good to have in the know? Yes, sir.
Real quick question, have you give somewhat of a similar presentation to the city council of Townsend?
Not yet, no.
But it is on the agenda. Thank you.
are you going to meet with the school officials? Are you planning to meet with those?
I haven't yet.
Okay, I was just kind of curious.
And typically that's kind of, we start with county commissioners or mayors depending on the county, but this committee is your committee. I will help you any way I can, but I don't tell you who should be on it. I can recommend different offices or types of organizations that are good participants, but really I'm giving you the opportunity to say yes or no, I want to do this, and I can help you gather a good crew. But it is your committee, and I'm happy to go educate whoever you want me to in any capacity. But the complete count committee itself is your committee, and I can help and guide and do some extra meetings to make sure everybody's up to speed to get started. But it's up to you who you want to be on it. I'm happy to recommend and meet with them, but it's up to you if you want a committee and who you want participating on it. And I did bring some packets that have a little more definition of what a complete count committee is, and so I can share that with you.
We have talked to Nicole, and she is still interested in doing this, so I'm assuming she would contact you, we'll have her contact you.
Yeah,
To see
that
if
would be
there's anything
great.
else that you need to set up or anything with her.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I will leave my contact information and lots of good stuff for you. And we can follow up as soon as you're ready.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, so we can go to our 11 o'clock. Al Christopherson, Silos Master Plan RFP, present RFP examples to the commission. This is a request for proposals for a master plan for the Silos Recreation Area.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing us, the Citizens Action Group for the Silos and Recreation Area, to participate with you and provide you some input on a RFP for the master plan for the Silos Recreation Area. You have a draft RFP that we've sent you for our input, and we developed this by looking at several examples and going through some other files of proposed outlines, those kind of things. I think the most significant thing is that a request for proposal is much different than a bid package. Bid package has to have all the specs, all the legal requirements of putting it out, and you know who says what to who doesn't, and all that kind of stuff. Request for proposal, basically we outline what we want as a final product, and we ask the bidders to put together as part of the package a statement of work that outlines how they will propose to do the work and give us that final product. In this case, the master plan for the Silos Recreation Area. So it's different. And I know that the revelation of a couple boxes of material from 2004, 2005, somewhere in there, when the Broadwater Bay project was funded and being developed. In those boxes is several documents, real thick. There is a solicitation to do that project, which has all the drawings, all the specs, all that stuff, bidding, bonding, everything. That's at least as thick as this package. And that was put together by the BOR. The primary thing in those boxes is what's called project plans and specifications, Broadwater Bay excavation and boat ramp. I've scanned through the final document there, and it is not a draft master plan for the Silos Recreation Area. These are the plans and all the documents that go with building Broadwater Bay. So I have not, as of yet, seen a document or read anything in there that references the master plan. Now I know that the base map that we all started to work with was done at the same time. There was a survey done of the campground where all the sites were put in, buildings, outhouses, all that kind of stuff. So we have that, and that's actually been the base map that we've worked from day one. So, I just give you that as a piece of background, because I know there's been a lot of discussion about, oh, the boxes have been found and stuff, and they have been, and that's great, but they are not a master plan, even in a draft form, that we have found yet, okay? And I don't see anybody from the BOR here. They were supposed to be here. But anyway, so the document that we've drafted it is a draft for you to look at and think about. We do have at least one more example coming to us that has been conveyed to us that this is a good example to look at. And I have not received that yet, so in view of that, I understand this really is a draft and could change. But anyway, it starts out with a scope of what the project is, and we simply just say that this is a master planning document that we want out of it. And where it is, it's for the Silos Recreation Area, Canyon Ferry Reservoir, Broadwater County. And it's to cover a vision time of 20 to 30 years. Some people may think that's a long time, but I suspect in this area it may be at least half that long before we get a lot of work done out there. But on the other hand, if we get lucky and hit the gong just right, it could be going in a year or two, and we could be done in 4 or 5 years. Some background information we put in about the campground itself, and that can be polished up. We know that we need some dates on some documents, things, and make sure that stuff's right. We do talk about the future development must be identified and included as part of the master plan. That's been the thing all the time. The Bureau has said, you know, before we're going to do anything out there, we have to have it included in the master plan. So we're looking at a horizon out there for the master plan. We also talk about the fact that it's a very heavily used recreation site. It's ranked about 3rd in the state of Montana, Canyon Ferry Reservoir, and the Silos is probably the heaviest used recreation site on the reservoir. And there's a lot of survey data that's, I think, backing us up. We've got stuff coming from the aquatic insect disease folks that have their monitoring stations all around, and we're going to get our hands on that information. We list reference documents, and that would be the Canyon Ferry Management Plan done by the Bureau, the partnership agreement that you all have with the BOR, and a framework plan that was done as the initial part of this whole thing a year and a half ago, the framework document, and then the work that the Montana State University Landscape Design class did. And while those are all parts and pieces, we want any contractor that's looking at this to at least have the same base level of information to work from. They can go search out more if they want, but they all need to have the same information from us that says, look at this. Kind of like this stuff up here. Any other documents that come up, we would have to list them in the RFP so that they have equal access to those levels of information. Then we go on, there's a tasks section. The first task we talk about is a development of the statement of work. This is where the contractor basically puts all their stuff together. They say, we have to write up a background, we do our background research, purpose and need of the project, existing facilities and the conditions, foreseeable facilities and users, design, all of those, what are about 11 things. The last one being the last three. Development cost estimates, those are by the alternatives they put together. Public and agency involvement in the master plan document itself. Schedule of work, how they're gonna do their, follow through with their statement of work, how they're gonna do all that. The assumptions that they use in developing the statement of work for the master plan. I think that's important, because if they make assumptions, how they put their proposal together, we need to understand those. And then a budget of the proposed tasks, which is their budget for this project. So there's two budget things. One is a budget or a financial, economic evaluation of all of the alternatives and what goes into each one of those. And then the budget for doing this contract. So there's, just make sure we keep them separate. We ask them to establish their design performance standards. We look at those. If they aren't what we want, we can negotiate those. That's the nice thing about this, is when they give us their stuff, we can negotiate back with them. One of the things is reports. This has $32,000 of trust board money in it, and one of our requirements as a trust board is monthly progress report of projects. So we put that in here. That there has to be a monthly progress report, comes to you guys as the commission, because you're the contractors. But the trust board, all of the funding entities, I think, would be entities that should get a copy of that report. So, and we'll see how that shows up. Deliverables are, could be several things. It could be public meetings when they hold those. Certainly the last thing is the master plan. They're going to have to show how they work in concert with the county and with the BOR on this, so that they are meeting the expectations of not only the county but the BOR, because this is the master plan for the BOR property that you guys have the agreement to manage. So it'll be important that the BOR is part of this. BOR has already identified a person that'll be their technical representative. And that'll be Dan Gallagher, I believe. And so he will be part of basically any meetings, any discussions, that kind of stuff going on with that. Then we want to see what the qualifications of the contractor is. So we're asking that they list their experience with recreation site master planning, when, where, what, and for whom. And we had a lot of discussion within our group getting to that one. We want to know the qualifications of whoever's proposing this, whether they've got experience dealing with water-based recreation, land-based large federal recreation sites like this is, and we want to know what the qualifications and experience of their staff that are being assigned to work on this proposal. And then we want some references for them, from them. So, we also want to make it sure that we're going to be evaluating their proposals, and that evaluation will be based on their statement of work, their overall proposal detail, which is the whole package, knowledge of the Silos recreation area, and experience and qualifications of the consultant and the staff and their references. So there are about 5 or 6 things there that we would suggest to be used to evaluate the proposals coming from contractors, consultants. Now, undoubtedly there's some detail here that needs to be filled in and that kind of thing, and we'd be glad to continue to work as we get another example or two and work with you on what your visions for this are. We've had some discussion, and I think you guys are thinking about it, you know, who would be administering this for you guys, for the county. We asked the BOR if their technical proposal person would be able to be your contract administrator. And that gate is somewhat open. We asked specifically if Dan could be your contract administrator. I think they have some sideboards they have to put on it about what he is as the technical advisor from the agency can do specifically for you guys, and so I think you'd have to have some discussion with them about that. But I think somebody like Dan would make a good contract administrator if that's something that you guys can work out in the details with. One of the primary things I think you would have left to do would be to make sure we get all the referenced material, all the stuff that we have, onto a spot on your county website, so that when this goes out, anybody that's interested can go to that site and find all the referenced documents and material that keeps it on an even platform for anybody that's looking. So, with that, questions?
I have a question. The Silos Master Plan, is it footprinted strictly on BOR ground?
Yes.
It is.
It's from the, if you're familiar with it, it's the north fence line on the north day use area. So I think they're section lines to the south end down there.
The north end being north of the airstrip?
No, north end of the day use area is about
Approximately midway of the airstrip.
yeah. If you go down there, there's a fence line comes off the airstrip fence. That's the boundary. And on the south end, it's where the BLM section comes down closer to the lake from the subdivision out there. And those are the two brackets for
So
the study area.
approximately 1.25 miles.
Probably about that, yeah.
Okay.
Now,
So
we have, part of the process of this thing is to try and show basically connections from the silos, recreation area. So at least acknowledge that there are avenues to get to the dikes on the south end out there. And that has connections clear to the river, it has connections to the highway and clear into town. That's an important thing, I think, that plan has to include. Going north, the whole issue about the hike bike path, it's not just the path, it's the parking area. How do you set all that up? And should that be part of looking at the master plan for the Silos Recreation Area? Should there be a parking area down there and then connect wherever that thing goes? I don't know.
So the path isn't a part of this master plan at this point?
Nope.
It's something that the trust board is considering strictly separately. There's no connection to the BOR at this point?
Not for the master plan. I mean, the master plan only deals with that, but we want it to acknowledge that it feeds other things. It is close to the Silos County land up there. You know, should there be a walkway or pathway that goes up that way? How do we connect to the highway for all the trails that go down the highway and into town and that kind of thing? So it's the thing is, hopefully it will look at those opportunities or those issues, but the decision space is the Silos Recreation Area.
I was just thinking it would be wise if there's been talk of potentially running that pedestrian trail along the BOR boundaries. And there it looks like it'd be wise to include that in your master plan if that's something that you are going to do rather than run it across.
I think that would be public comment that would be welcome when this contractor starts putting this thing together. Just exactly that, which way or how should it be done? And how they address it and the path itself, I think, is a different issue. That's a BOR specific thing that they're gonna have to deal with doing their assessment on that, if it's on BOR land. If it's not on BOR land, it's somebody else's job. But I think the master plan is just to acknowledge avenues of ingress and egress to the recreation area.
So if the county was to get out of their contract with the BOR on the campground, that has a 2-year clause on it. how would the BOR be tied to this master plan? I mean, if we go through the time and money to develop this master plan, and then the counties said we no longer want to be involved with this lease for this facility, is there any way that we can tie the BOR to follow that master plan with the guidelines that you have in here?
Well, this is my thought, just standing here responding, is that I think the master plan should have an approval page that you guys sign and that the BOR signs. Cannot let them out of this deal. That's me. But it's BOR property. They've got to agree to what the plan is, and I think it's a mutual sign page. You guys sign it, and they gotta sign it. So then there's no exit from what's in that plan. So I think that helps. How you do that, I think that's the reason there's a technical advisor from the BOR, and I've had some discussion with them about that, and that they need to be as much on the approval page as you guys. So I think that's part of the deal is, and it's probably something we need to write in here, thinking about it, is that a contractor that's looking at putting a proposal together here has to understand what the requirements for the BOR are to do a master plan. And if we're saying this is a mutually approved document, you guys are the contractor, but you got half of their money. So they've got to be on the page with you, and I think that sets it up then.
Can I ask a quick question? Is the master plan shown somewhere where you can go look at it currently?
There is no master plan at this point.
Oh,
That's why we're doing this.
I thought something had been approved though, already.
No. Well, we've looked back historically, that's why the discussion about these missing documents and all that stuff, we can't, at least so far, have not found anything that says a master plan was done back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. The documents that we have now are all construction documents for Broadwater Bay. So this is the plan. It's much bigger to look way down the road, long-term horizon, 20, 30 years. And
essentially, many federal grants, et cetera, to facilities such as the Silos Recreation Area cannot come through without a master plan.
So even the
Gotta
Silos
get this
master
up
plan
front,
is not been established?
It has
no,
not-
that's what this contract.
That's what this contract is
Okay.
for, is to
Yeah.
establish a master plan.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Bob's exactly right. Entities that we've talked to as we've tried to get some funding together to get the master plan done, most entities will tell you that they are not interested in doing planning work. I understand that. But come back to us and talk to us when you got the master plan done, because we're all ready to help you with implementation. And so I think, the message there is we're gonna have a lot of opportunity to partner up, find grant funds, find partners to do work once we get the master plan done. Because then the BOR's already said, yes, we like the way this works. My opinion, they've signed off on it at that point. So anything within that plan then is go-gettable, and we can start looking for partners to help do certain aspects. Some of it is big stuff. I mean, you start rebuilding camp pads and roads and water systems and power lines and all that. That's money that's gonna have to come through the system to pay for that. There are a lot of stuff like gazebos and planting trees and all those kind of things that are amenities to a big facility are things that I think the county will be successful at getting grant money. Or the BOR is gonna have to come back and do it. But without master plan, you can do any of it.
Just some version.
Yeah, one of the things on the master plan, and, you know, been working with this for years. The BOR doesn't have anything that they can go ahead with at the moment to put on their construction budgets. And those are the people that make the requests through the Department of the Interior for development costs. So until you get some good paperwork, a good plan, and everybody's in agreement, it's very difficult for those people to go to Congress and ask for money without a good plan that everybody's in agreement on. And, you know, the quicker you can get this done, and things in what I call fluid, then those folks in the Bureau can go through the process and start getting some of this construction funded. And that, you know, sometimes that takes 2 or 3 years, even with the plan approved. So the quicker this thing gets done, the quicker we'll be able to, the Bureau to be able to move forward back to Washington and get funds allocated, particularly to this project.
So, Virgil, as far as the trust board goes, if the county decides to get out of the concessionaire contract with the BOR, not be involved with that facility anymore?
Well, that would be then as I see it, Mike, the Bureau then acts on its own. It's the landowner, the land manager. The county is out of it, they move forward, and like any of the other, like Goose Bay and this sort of thing.
So would the trust board still be available to do some funding, matching with the BOR, with the county not being involved?
Yes, well, the county would be involved, Mike, but it would be on request, and it'd have to be approved by the commission. Same process we've been using since we started. Okay.
So I can leave it that,
There's Dan.
we still have some looking and thinking to do, and improving of this, and some filling in some detail and making it a little better for you. And if you want to continue to look at this and have us fill out some more stuff, we can do that for you and get back. I mean, we're as anxious to get this thing on the street as you guys are. We do now have all of the checks that the citizens group went after and raised, so we have that $13,000 in hand. So we've made that commitment for you guys, and we've got it in hand now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, that's the direction that probably, I think we're comfortable going with, is having you guys still continue to help us on this RFP, get your input, and we'll go from there. And I think some of these issues we can address as we, the dance here, as we start our negotiations on these new contracts with the Bureau. If we can address some of those issues there. And I guess, Dan, since you're here, we'll ask what your thoughts are on, we want to we open our negotiations with our concessionaire, and how would the Bureau feel about that? If you if you were to take over that responsibility of a concessionaire.
If Reclamation would take over that concessionaire?
Yeah.
I know that it's in our mandate that we have in order to maintain a partnership, you know, as far as I don't think Reclamation necessarily would want to go that route. I think they would want to probably maintain some sort of partnership first and foremost. But I think that's probably be more weight on the county, on what they want to do with that.
I think we'll maintain that partnership. How do you do your concessionaire agreements in some of your other areas, like Goose Bay and some places like that?
Very similar to probably what Al probably presented, where we go out and we put together a document for a request for proposal, and then they several people come out and they bid on it, and then we choose the right one, or we choose the one that we feel most qualified. So it goes out for an RFP, we get proposals back, and then they get evaluated based on the information that what they provide.
I think one of the important things to remember is, it is important for us to remain as a partner, because if I remember right, there's some grant opportunities that the county can take advantage of that the Bureau could, is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah. So we could actually be basically maybe a pass-through to help you with some of that funding, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Or and vice versa, if we can't do it, then you guys probably could, versus what we might be able to do. So it's a mutual benefit.
I think the plan is here in the near future for us to all get together, and you're gonna bring some of your draft documents of what you thought would be a good, some agreements that you've been with before with other agencies, right? And then we would kind of start to develop a contract that would be beneficial for both of us, is that right?
I was supposed to bring that? I don't believe I was.
No, I mean, no, not now, but I mean, we're talking here in the next couple months.
Al asked if, he was searching, because he was preparing for the presentation. And so he asked if I could provide him with some documentation of what we've done before, and I did that. As far as, providing you examples, I think that's probably possible to do. RFPs, we call them a little something different. We don't call them necessarily RFPs, but they go out as a statement of work, to people to bid on. And then it goes on what they call, I forget the name of the website, but it goes out to everybody. And that's how the Forest Service does it too. And now I can send that link to you, and if you did just a quick search, you can see all the ones that are out there on how to do that.
I think we're talking two different things.
We are talking two different things.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're talking about our actual contract,
Partnership.
the partnership between the
Oh.
county and the VOR.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah, so and what is your question for that?
that, we are planning to get together in the future.
Absolutely.
To do that.
Yep.
And I know that you had some ideas.
Yeah, I
or
think,
previous agreements that you've done.
yes, absolutely. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you
Yeah,
were saying
that's
there.
all right. Okay, all right. Very good. Anything else, Mike?
No, I don't, I think that everything in here that I've seen did you have one more document you said you had coming in for?
I have another example coming
Okay.
in to look at that could change some of this formatting, bring some other thoughts into it, things like that. So this is kind of our base entry, let you guys know what's going on, and like I said, we're all interested in trying to get this thing out as quick as we can, but we want to make sure we do it right, and it's everybody's got the same picture to work from, and so we got to get stuff on the website and things like that. But
I think it's important, one, make sure that, Dan, if there's any specific bullet points that we don't miss in this RFP process, it's important to the Bureau.
Absolutely, and Al was also talking, asking if we could, if the reclamation or myself could potentially help out both with the county and with him as far as being able to do that. And I did receive approval from my supervisor that we can certainly review and be support to the county, but when it's all said and done, it's up to the county to pick the right applicant for it, for the job. But certainly, we would like to certainly review any documents and, provide comments to the county and project updates.
Very good. Anything else you want to
I
add?
think that's it.
All right. A lot of that information I was telling you about is up in our office. If you
I would like to see
go
that.
take a look at it, I mean, Al's had a chance to go through it. It wasn't everything that we thought was there, but there's still some pretty good stuff, so.
Okay. And what's over there, I can certainly get scanned for you, if you got I don't know if there's maps there or what, but I can get them scanned, and that way people can have them electronically and things of that nature too. And then whoever might be your winning bidder for the project, they might find some of that stuff useful as well.
okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so we will go to our 11:30 Allison Costco MSU Extension Fair Board, combination of extension fair management and staff.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank
See you guys.
you.
Morning, Allison.
Hey, how are you? John's here too.
Don, thanks for coming.
Good job.
Where do you want to start?
Understand how the process works.
Well, I guess, I've looked at a couple of different job descriptions. It seems like you and the fair board have kind of come to agreement of that description. Is that right, John? You guys are comfortable with where we're at?
Yeah, the last revision we did,
Yeah.
I think we'd be good with that.
Okay, good. I guess we all know there's probably gonna be a few little things along the way that we can sort out, but I think if we all work together, we can work through that, right? Just kind of something new that we're trying.
Right, I think the first year is going to be a big learning curve to figure out how it all works together and how to get the timing, so it's not totally overwhelming to this person. But I think it's doable. I think it's just going to take some figuring out.
All right.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, you wanna go forward with it? You guys wanna do that? I know we've had trouble filling the position. This seems like an option for us.
Well, I know that the other thing that we wanted to talk about was the wage for the position. Because we both feel like the proposal that came down from the accounting office is maybe a little outside of our budget. You know, certainly I think that matrix is an excellent tool to kind of give us a starting point, but I also think that we have to kind of live within our means, and both of our budgets are fairly tight. So I think our proposal, what we'd like to propose is starting wage at $14 an hour with a 50-cent increase after that promotional period, which I think would be a little more realistic, if that makes sense.
That would work better for us.
Okay.
And I think if you're okay with that, I think everything else is, I think we'd like to give it a try, if that wage is acceptable. See what we get.
Okay, and you feel that that's a good enough starting wage to attract somebody to the position?
I hope so. You know, it is full-time. It does have the county benefits, which I think is really attractive. I'd love to be able to offer more. I really would. You know, and I know that we did add some additional responsibilities to the position by combining them, but again, I think the reality is I'm, you know, a little limited on budget and just don't have a lot of wiggle room. And you know, this first year, you know, we do have some salary savings, but just looking to the future and having to be able to budget that full year into it, it's going to be tight, even at that. But I think it's maybe workable.
We want to make sure that we're looking into the following years as well. I mean, you know, this year I think we're okay, but we want to make sure that the following years that we can do it, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Not unless you guys can come up with more money for us.
We always
Right.
can, but we gotta ask these guys here.
Right, yeah, we wouldn't turn that down. Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
So I do have a question, Mike and Daryl. You know, if you know, we moving forward, if something, we go with this, but if it doesn't work out, do we still have the opportunity to go back to the 2 part-time positions if on that, or are we just gonna be set in stone and that's the way it is?
You know, I guess nothing's ever set in stone. I guess if we get to a point and we find out that it's simply not working, then sure, well, at least from my standpoint, I'm one commissioner, so I would surely look at doing something different. So, but I think it's worth giving it a shot, see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying it.
I'm in agreement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what's are we good to go forward then with it, or do we have a?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, I guess maybe I'll put it in the form of a motion then, that we move forward with the combined position of the extension administrative assistant and fair manager. And we'll use that pay matrix that you suggested, Allison, to start with, and we'll see what happens. So we'll go ahead and get that advertised. All right.
And
Question over here, Mike.
I'll second that motion. Is there any other discussion?
What was the wage that you're talking about starting this out?
Start out at $14 an hour, and then after their probationary period, we could increase it to 15.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean 50 cents. I'm sorry. So we go to 14.50.
Any further discussion? Any comment? Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries.
All right. Good luck. Keep us posted how that goes. Thanks, John, for working with us on that. Thank your board.
And moving forward as we go through the process, Daryl, are you gonna be on the committee again? Do you want us to keep you in the loop?
Sure.
Or do you want?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay,
Do that.
okay, all right, we'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks, Sean.
All right, you're welcome.
Pretty much concludes our agenda. Is there any other public comment, questions or answers? Yes, Chuck?
I have one more question, just for clarification. When the trust board brought the proposal to hire Peter Simon to you, does the commission have to vote on that, or is that just a deal?
The contract with Peter? Yes.
Had you already voted on it previously?
No, we haven't seen the contract. We just
Oh, okay.
approved him going to him to have
So this was just a proposal?
get a proposal from him. I think they were having trouble getting in contact with him or something to get everything ironed out. Okay, so if not, we will adjourn at 11:44.
Thanks, everybody.
Unbelievable. I mean, I gave myself.